Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about shooting in low light with the A7S III. But real quick before we get started, if you enjoy this video, if you like it, if you learned something, be sure to hit like down there. That helps me out a ton because it helps new people see these videos and helps grow the channel, which means so much to me. So thank you for that, and let's get into it. So as I'm sure you know, for a long time now, the A7S line of cameras have been known as the low light kings, and the S3 is no different. It's wild, it's crazy. It's probably better in low light than any other camera on the market right now. Don't quote me on that because I could be wrong. So to start with, that sequence you watched at the beginning was all shot between 12,800 and 128,000 ISO, which is like mind-blowing to me that I would ever use any of that range in a video, and actually edit it and put it together and it looked good enough to use. But I mean, that's what we're doing with the A7S III. But even the king has a limit. And today we're gonna talk about what that is. What's the highest ISO that I personally feel comfortable using from this camera? We're also gonna talk a little bit about S-Log3 in low light. And we're gonna talk about the magical dual gain ISO thing that this camera does. I'm sure you've heard about it. If not, we'll cover it real quick. Let's get into it. Let's talk about that first. So in every picture profile, this happens at like a different ISO. But if you look right here in S-Log3, when you go from 10,000 to 12,800, the image just magically cleans up. It's like way cleaner. This is super weird, but I found it's also really important to understand because what I found and what I've heard from other creators is that it really doesn't make sense to shoot between 4,000 and 10,000 ISO, because if you just flip it over to 12,800, your image cleans up drastically. Like looking at these two clips here, I would say that 12,800 is way cleaner than even 5,000 or 6,000 or 8,000. So one of my rules when shooting low light is unless I can keep it below 3,200, then I just need to get to that 12,800. And if 12,800 is too bright, I'll just throw the ND filter on there, bring it down. It's super unintuitive to me to bump my ISO higher to get a cleaner image, but that's just kind of how it is on this camera. But while yes, it does really clean up at 12,800, I think by the time you get to 20,000, you can see some of that grain coming back in. It's not awful, and it's definitely not my cap, but just be aware it does get a little bit more grainy at 20,000. Okay, so we know not to shoot in that range. Let's talk about where to stop shooting. Where is just way too high. And I kind of have two levels for this. There's I shouldn't go over this if I want it to look clean. And then there's hey, don't go any higher or it's just absolutely unusable. So I would say my soft limit, my soft ceiling is 51,200. But if I have to push it, after reviewing the footage and looking at what the noise looks like on this comparison, I would say that 102,400 is my absolute max. If I do have to go over it, I'm definitely gonna have to use some denoising software in post. I'm looking at these few clips with 128,000 ISO and they are just, there's a lot of noise, which granted, that's freaking impressive. So I'm not upset about it in any way. I'm honestly mind blown to be shooting over 6,400 ISO. Also with these clips I'm showing, I literally just ran the camera on this same composition and then turn the ISO up every 3 or so seconds. So if you just wanna watch that and kind of see how the ISO affects the grain, you can click this video up here. It's literally just 3 minutes of me turning my ISO up. So check that out if you think it'd be helpful for you. So everything I shot for these tests was shot in S-Log3. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, S-Log3 is way noisier. There's way more grain. It's not good in low light. But I don't think that's true. And I really don't care. Let me tell you why. Reason number one is I think the reason people think there's more grain in S-Log3 is because you have to overexpose by 2 stops, 1.7 stops. So you're turning your ISO higher, so there is more grain in your image. But when you put the conversion LUT on, when you grade it and bring it back to Rec. 709, you crush your shadows, you crush that grain, and the noise is significantly reduced back to where it would be if you were using no picture profile or Cine 4 or something like that. Reason number two, and the most important, is that Gerald Undone told me that gammas do not affect noise. Color profiles do not affect noise, and I don't know the science behind that. If you want to go check out his video about the A7S III, you definitely should if you own this camera, but he will explain that way better than I could. And then beyond that, I really just don't want to change my whole workflow. I shoot almost everything else in S-Log3, and I don't really want to change that just to shoot in low light. I'm super used to overexposing by 2 stops, I have my zebras set up to clip on S-Log3, and then my color grading workflow is all S-Log3, my conversion LUTs, all of that stuff. And so far from what I've seen, I can't tell that it's adding any more noise or grain. But also shoot in whatever picture profile you want. This camera is phenomenal in low light in any picture profile. Just remember the whole like dual gain ISO circuit thing happens at different ISOs and different picture profiles. If you want to know where those levels are, again, check out Gerald Undone's video. But that is all I have for y'all today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, if you learned something, again, please hit like down below. If you want to see more of these videos, more content about the A7S III, hit subscribe and click the bell. Y'all, we are super close to 1,000 subs, which has me super hyped and super thankful to all of y'all that have already subbed. Y'all are phenomenal people. Thank you. I'll see you next week.